Alrighty now, welcome back to Kim Talks Resilience. So, speaking with women from around the world to women around the world. Get a chance? Be sure to check out queenofresilience.shop. Queenofresilience.shop is kind of a little side project for myself. It's a little bit of fun, a lot of sass. There's just some crazy, cool, fun things. So if you're out shopping around for Christmas this year or birthdays or anything like that, do check out queenofresilience.shop. So our guest today is, really very important because this is a really critical thing that we talk about. We can't go back in time and fix things, but we can proceed forward to ensure the next generations, have opportunity for protection and guidance. And we can only do that by helping ourselves. Patricia Stahl is a therapist in private practice specializing in social anxiety. Again and again in her work, she has witnessed firsthand how enduring bullying as a child can leave painful scars that are carried into adulthood. This pain has brought home for her on a personal level when one of her sons began being bullied at his elementary school, an experience that served as the original inspiration for her book. Her goal is to empower kids with useful insight and strategies for navigating the challenges of bullying, ultimately surviving and thriving. Patricia has a bachelor's degree in social psychology from Cornell University and a master's of social work from the University of Texas in Arlington. She does live in Dallas, Texas, which, with the weather turning cold here in Calgary, I could only wish. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi, nice to see you, Kim.
I'm super excited. Just so everybody knows, I met Patricia at this really great platform called NPS, National Publicity Summit, that Steve Hannon puts on quarterly. And I got the opportunity to hear her pitch. And of course, as soon as we found we had some alignment, I go, oh, I have to have her on. I have to have her on because I totally get it. I totally get where you're at, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. So we're going to start with who is Patricia?
Okay, I'll do my best. I was born in Massachusetts. I have two younger brothers. Went through high school, public high school. My mother and father were kind of absent, so I would say that I took a lot of responsibility for raising my brothers, at least emotionally. And my parents got divorced right after my senior year in high school. So it became my responsibility to kind of guide them through that as best I could as a 18-year-old. So I went to Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And after that, I came back to Boston and decided I had studied Spanish and French in high school and college, and I decided I wanted to interpret. So I got a volunteer job at a hospital in Boston called the Mass General Hospital. And I went around with a little beeper and interpreted for the patients. It's amazing because back then, and this was a long time ago, back then there was nobody there to interpret for any of the patients who didn't speak English. So that was a big responsibility. And I had to go so far as to tell people they had cancer and to get all the information that the doctor needed. So after a while, I started feeling like, I need a little more Spanish and French. So I moved to Mexico City. And before that, I was working as a counselor. I should back up. As a counselor in the state employment office and helping people to improve their skills so that they'd be able to get a job. Okay, so I moved to Mexico City. I studied Spanish and I taught English to people there. And then I moved to France and did the same thing there. Then I went back to Dallas with the man who became my husband, who I'd met in Mexico, and never did any translating. But it's nice to know those languages. And I got my master's in clinical social work and started working. I worked in a women's clinic. I worked in a phobia and anxiety disorders center. And And then I went into a practice with some other therapists, and now I'm in private practice for the last 10 or 14 years with adults. And
Okay,
that's,
so let's tackle the practice with adults is social anxiety and the trend that you saw within the adults that led you to, I need to write a book. I need to do something about this. So share with us a little that trend that you saw within your clients, that social anxiety and the bullying.
yeah. I started recognizing that so many of the adults I worked with who were experiencing social anxiety, which means difficulty interacting with other people, it can take a lot of forms. Maybe it's speaking in front of others only, or maybe it's going to social situations, or it can be anything, writing in front of people, for instance. It's all based on a fear of being judged negatively. Okay, that's really what social anxiety is all about, a fear that someone's going to see them as imperfect in some way. So I started noticing that so many of the adults I was working with started talking to me about having been bullied as kids. And it doesn't come out early on because there's so much shame around having been bullied. And but they do eventually kind of talk about it, and the feelings that they had about themselves during that bullying really haven't resolved. They're adults, they can be as old as I am, and they're still dealing with the repercussions of having been bullied as a kid. So that can mean that they don't trust other people, that they avoid social situations, that they become people pleasers because they want to try really hard to be liked, and they feel like to be accepted they have to go along with what other people want. So it's not a very happy life. So
No. And
yeah,
well, and you can even see that um, with some, some people can also have that kind of feeling of bullying from a decision that maybe was made by a parent. And then that starts undermining everything. And I think that I think people around you are like little animals. They can kind of smell when you're vulnerable. They
yeah,
know and when they can come in for blood, and it compounds on it. You yourself had a challenge with one of your sons, correct?
I did. And that was the original impetus for writing this book, which was, I started really about 25 years ago on this book. Yeah, he was bullied. He was small for his age. And when he started a new school in fifth grade, there was a big guy who had been at the school for years. And he decided that Travis, my son, would be a good target. And he used to go around calling him loser and kicking his backpack into the woods. I must admit that because he was so small, I was uncomfortable having him carry these big backpacks that the kids, because they had them stuffed with books. I felt like they were heavier than he was. So I insisted on a rolling backpack, which was the kiss of death for my poor son. And then that caused this big guy to kick it around and call him loser.
You know what? It wouldn't have mattered a rolling backpack, a skateboard backpack, no matter what. I just sometimes people are, makes you wonder what the big guy was going through, because there is a reason why he felt the drive to go after somebody who was weaker, physically weaker than him. Um, my oldest son went through significant bullying, like bullying to the point where we had to take him to the emergency once because he had his head kicked in
Oh,
by this boy. And they used to routinely take his backpack, and he had a cool one. He had a cool one that he could put a skateboard on, and take his backpack, and they would steal the backpack and dump his books in the garbage can, and it was just awful. And as a parent, all I wanted to do was rip down to the school, wait for the parents to show up and give them my peace of mind. But
I remember that feeling very well, very well. Oh my gosh.
so before we dive into the book, I'd like to maybe go through in your practice, what is one thing, one thing
Mhm.
that we as adults and I'm going to say this, adult survivors of bullying, because I was, by eighth grade, nobody would let me at their table. I
Oh,
was sit at their lunch table. I was an absolute outcast. And when I say that I think children can sense there was something significant or something different, I mean,
mhm.
I was at home going through significant trauma and abuse at my father's hands. And then I'd go to school and I
Yeah,
wouldn't be allowed to sit at a table with anybody,
yeah,
right?
boy,
Um,
it's gonna be
but
pretty.
it's yeah, and that's just, how, unfortunately, um, these things tend to compound.
Mhm,
They tend to compound. And I've been blessed that I don't know why. I had this kind of resilient piece in me. I'm like, what is that? Rubber and glue. What doesn't sticks on me sticks on you. I don't know if you remember that old saying, but there's all these crazy old sayings. What is something that I'm 40, I'm coming in, things are triggering. Social media is triggering. This
mhm,
pandemic has been triggering. The financial situation is triggering. I mean, just the cost of buying groceries now is
mhm.
30% higher. What is one thing that we could do to start, I guess, bringing down that level of anxiety? Something we can do for ourselves that you find is routinely helpful.
Well, I think I'll talk about two things. One, and you've probably encountered this in other places, deep breathing. Through your nose, out through your mouth, counting, holding it for in for 4, hold for 4, out for 5, that sort of thing. Because and a lot of people think, oh, that's not going to work, but it really calms you down physiologically. So if your heart's beating faster, you're feeling tense, your breathing is shallow, it's amazing what breathing can do for you. So that's a quick way to help yourself in the moment. But in general, my go-to strategy is something called cognitive therapy, and I don't know whether you're familiar with that, but it's about
No.
looking at what your thoughts are that precede the feeling. So if you're feeling really angry or really depressed or anxious, uh, instead of trying to say to yourself, which so many people do, you shouldn't feel angry or don't feel anxious or whatever, look at what you were thinking before the feeling came on you and try to address that thought, and challenge it, because most of the time those thoughts are not rational. So, like, this will never get better. Oh my gosh, this will never get better. Okay, so then you have to say, well, what evidence do you have that this will never get better? Right? That kind of question. Or how likely is it that this will never get better, that you will always be in this situation? And most of the time, it's not really likely, or at least you have no evidence to base your
Yeah.
anxiety on. And then the next question, these are three really important questions. How likely is this to happen? What's the worst that could happen, right? And then could you stand that? Could you survive that? Not would you like it, would you be comfortable, but could you get through that? And the answer is really always yes. I mean, we get through, all of us get through pretty horrible things, and we probably think we can't in advance. So it's kind of just bringing the thought down so that it doesn't cause so much agitation.
And that's, I do agree 110% that, you know, stopping and breathing. I tend to practice. So I drink a lot of tea,
Hmm.
but I know that when I'm getting to an agitated space, I need to slow down, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I usually will have something that is a cinnamon or apple scent, like a apple cider or apples cinnamon tea or something like that, and I close my eyes
Hmm.
and just inhale. And
Hmm.
it's funny because you talk about the breathing. I'm actually forcing myself to slow down and breathe, but I'm doing something that gives me, because the scent of cinnamon always is like the happy things, my grandma and grandpa's house, and the apple pie and things like that. So it really trips and triggers those happy memories.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we're going to take this to the book now, right? So you counsel adults who have come through what you witnessed your son come through.
Mhm.
And the book, tell me a little bit about uh, what we can expect from the book.
Okay. Um, well, I'll tell you kind of its history. About 25 years ago, I started thinking, if kids knew that their heroes who they idolized had been bullied as kids, it would really normalize that experience for them and take away a lot of the shame. I think shame is the worst part of being bullied. You assume there's really something wrong with you. So I thought, well, if they knew that The Rock was bullied as a kid, or Tom Cruise, or Taylor Swift, or whoever they idolize, and it's not just celebrity, I mean, not just entertainers, but athletes, or I have a polar explorer, for instance, those kinds of things, that they would feel better. So I wrote letters. This was before I knew how to do email. I wrote letters to as many celebrities as I could think of, and I asked them if they had been bullied and if they would share that information. And I can't tell you how many letters I wrote, but I got one response. And that was from, believe it or not, a Dallas Cowboy football player whose name was Moose Johnston. I didn't know him personally or know anything about his career, but apparently he was a pretty successful football player. And he wrote me back and told me all about having been bullied and what he suggested kids do. And so that inspired me to continue. And I gave up on actually trying to contact these celebrities directly. And instead, I kind of searched through the media for all these years. And anytime I saw anybody, any celebrity being interviewed who mentioned bullying, I would cut it out. And so the book is over 60 stories, 60 main stories, and then a bunch of others of celebrities from different fields who were bullied. They talk about what happened to them and then how they got through it. And in a lot of cases, advice for kids who are suffering with it now. And so that's what it's about. And of course, I add my own thoughts about how to deal with the bullying because, I
Absolutely. Do you have anything in there for advice for like parents who are looking into their child's being bullied? Or do you have, or would you like to share some advice for parents who are just trying to protect their kids?
exactly. That's all they're trying to do. Yes, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of the people who have bought this book, well, parents obviously have to buy the book because
Yeah.
kids aren't going to buy a book. But it is really for parents to share with their kids. Did you know that Taylor Swift was bullied for liking country music? And now look at her, or The Rock was, or Tyson, the fighter, was bullied as a kid. And so, like I said, it helps normalize the experience. But I'll tell you, the main piece of advice is, and it's tough to do, but the main piece of advice, I think, is to communicate to the bully that it's not bothering you. Because what's the bully looking for? They're looking for you to put up a fight or to get really, sad, and they can feel more powerful, the bully. So if a child can look at a bully and say, "Oh, okay," like for instance, there's a technique called fogging. It's an assertiveness technique. It's really all about assertiveness, right? Not letting the bully know this is getting to you. So of course it is. You can't not let it get to you, but don't let the bully know that. Don't cry. Don't get angry. Don't do any of those things. Just act like, oh, okay. So you think this. So one example would be, you're so tall, you look like a giraffe. Okay. So you could respond, yeah, I'm tall. You're not going to agree that you look like a giraffe, but you're going to acknowledge, yeah, I'm tall. And you're going to say it in a way that says, and that's okay. You don't have to say that, but it's almost like that's the attitude. That's okay. I know I'm tall. That's fine. So it takes the wind out of the bully's sails, like, right? I mean, it's no fun anymore. So parents can really practice this technique with their kids, role play. they can say insulting things, whatever the kid's hearing, and have the kid practice not showing how they're feeling and saying something back like that, like, yeah, I'm taller. Oh, sorry, you don't like my shoes, or whatever it may be. I'll tell you what I did with my son, which was just something I came up with on the fly because I was, and I know you can imagine, you can relate. I was so desperate to find something that I could do. One day I told him, we'll call his bully Buck. His well, I won't go into what we called him at home.
Does it rhyme with Buck? Okay, sorry, we digress.
Not in front of my son, but when we were alone, my husband and I. But so one day I said to him, okay, I'm going to give you a quarter. This is when a quarter meant something. It was like, I don't know. I'm going to give you a quarter every time Buck calls you a loser. So, but I want you to tell Buck that you're getting paid. So, he looked at me like I was crazy, and like I thought he'll never do this. But he went to school and he didn't say anything to me for a couple of days. And then a few days later, he came back and he said, okay, you owe me a quarter. And I said, whoa, just one quarter? Because he's used to hearing loser constantly. He said, yeah. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I told Buck when I went to school, call me a loser. And he said, why? And I said, just call me a loser. And he said, why? I said, because my mother's going to pay me every time you call me a loser. So Buck said, well, I'm not going to call you a loser. So that was it. He didn't want to do it as long as my son wanted him to do it, and my son could gain from it. And then later that day, apparently Buck asked my son for a pencil, to borrow a pencil. And my son said, only if you'll call me a loser first. And he wouldn't. So he didn't get his pencil, and my son didn't get any more quarters. So.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. I think that a lot of us parents, me, wanted to rush in and fix it, rush in and save. And and my son didn't always want that. He was just looking for a sounding board. And he was just looking for somebody, a safe place to vent, right?
Exactly.
So I can say, as a parent, it's a miracle I didn't end up in jail, because there's a couple times I wanted to rip into that school and rip into a few people.
Exactly.
And if you're a parent out there and your kid is being bullied, do seek help, not just for your child, but for yourself, because you're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. I think as parents, we tend to forget that these little human beings are their own genetic code. And they're going to have their own way of dealing with things and responding to things. So a lot, I see parents who walk around with embarrassment or shame, and they don't get the help, or the supports that they need in order to ensure the child is raised to adulthood, feeling supported, seen, heard, and valued. With the book, tell us, where can you get the book? Is it on Amazon? Is it in the bookstores? And give us a little idea as to your journey to becoming a published author. Because I know what the stats are. I'd like to know what your stats are around. You said you've been working on it for 20 years, but give me a little bit of background on where we can get the book and kind of your journey in becoming a published author.
Published, self-published. I didn't even try to get published by anybody else. So you can get it now on Amazon. It's just From Loser to Legend at Amazon. But I did all the writing. I did collecting of the stories and all the information that I wanted in there. And that would have been it for me, because I don't know anything about how to get a designer, how to get a cover, how to anything else really, except do the writing. And thankfully, I have two sons who really stepped in there and did it all. They found an artist to do the cover, they found a designer, they found an editor, and they put it all together. They got it onto Amazon, and so I'm so grateful to them for that. And yeah, and what I do with it, I've gone to the Association of School Counselors because that would be great to have a counselor have this uh, resource. Couldn't think of the word. So I got some of the books sold there, and then next week I'm going to the actually Canadian and American Child Psychiatry Conference in Toronto. And so that's parents, teachers, counselors. That's who I want to see get this. And frankly, it's not about the money at all for me. Every time I either give or sell a book to someone, I think this is one kid who maybe helped to deal with the shame. It has a lot of messages in there, like you were saying, the bully may be having his or her own problems. That's really important for kids to know, that these bullies aren't super cool and just were born super cool. They're struggling themselves. They were bullied by someone or being bullied now. They saw bullying in their family. It can be that they're jealous. It can be that they're the popular kids, but they're trying to maintain their popularity by making other people feel bad so that kids will laugh. I mean, I actually had a client recently who said she was bullied pretty badly by this boy when she was in school. She's in her 50s now, and she ran into him recently, and he said, and I am so sorry that I bullied you like that. The reason was that I had such a crush on you, and I didn't know how to express it. So, all this time she'd been thinking there was something wrong with her.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead. It is fascinating when you go I went back to Wichita, where I'm originally from, years ago. I think we're going on 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years ago. God, time flies. And I made a point to go out for an appetizer and a glass of wine with two girls I went to school with that until 8th grade, they had been kind of like the last stand of friends. And then 8th grade, kind of everything fell off. Well, we're sitting there and talking, and I found out that one girl had significant learning challenges, and she was going through, I mean, her tutoring was hours every night. Meanwhile, her two younger sisters were, the high school cheerleaders and, everything you can imagine. And then the other gal, her family was going through very significant financial challenges in the 80s. And she, we were talking, she goes, if her brother had not worked at McDonald's, they would have never had a meal out for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and we don't think about that. We as human beings are somewhat selfish and insular in the sense, and that's just is our self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of getting older is we're able to really look at things a bit, almost like that from a third person perspective, and look at the overarching. And when we're working with our kids, how can we take some of that wisdom that we gain with age,
mm-hmm.
and help our children excel a little, help them gain some of that wisdom? I love your strategy around, go ahead and call me loser. I get paid, right? What are some of the other things that we could do to help our children weather the challenges that they will face? They will face.
For sure. Well, first of all, if you can get your child to tell you, and like you were talking about, your son was maybe concerned that you were going to run up to the school and make a scene. That's one of the reasons why kids don't share their bullying experiences with their parents. They don't trust them to not overreact. So I think one thing to do is to say right from the start, I will not do anything that you don't approve of. I won't talk to anyone about it. I won't do anything unless you agree. So, but just getting your kid to talk in general is difficult. So sometimes, I was thinking about this the other day. I think a good way to get them to talk, first of all, you have to be willing to listen. And these days, a lot of parents are on their phones as much as their kids, and they don't necessarily give the kids the attention and the listening that they need. But so if you need to present yourself as a person who's willing to listen, and then I just lost my thought. You think it's jet lag? I think
Yeah. Well, make sure you pack your coat if you're headed to Toronto, because it's not nearly as warm in Canada as it is in Texas. But
Oh,
yeah, so
um,
be an active listener,
right. And
and
say is, I got it, is I heard there was some bullying going on in your school. Have you heard anything about it? And they say whatever they say. And then you might say, well, have you ever experienced that? Does it happen to you? And then once they can talk about it, then you can kind of help normalize the experience. Like you said, well, gee, I was bullied by these girls when I was growing up, and I just found out that these were the things they were going through, for instance. But the messages in my book are all about that. What the things that you're being bullied for now may very well be the things that end up making you into a superstar, because that's what a lot of the celebrities are saying. I was teased for instance, that soccer player who's David Beckham. He was given a really hard time because he didn't want to go out on the weekends. He just wanted to practice soccer. So the boys would give him a hard time. Obviously, they were jealous of him, which is another reason why bullies bully sometimes. And here he is, a superstar, a soccer player, because he was willing to do that. And the celebrities a lot of times talk about the fact that they attribute their success to being bullied because they worked harder than the average person trying to kind of prove to their bullies that they were worthy. And that's a big part of what the celebrities had to say. I think it never would have happened if I hadn't really tried to work hard at being whatever it was to show those bullies.
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, there was a song, "Talk Talk," back in the '80s,
Okay.
and that was yeah. All you do is talk, talk, and I talked a lot because it was my deflection.
Yeah.
I talked a lot about absolutely nothing. And I was just mortified in 8th grade when that was the Talk Talk was my song dedication, right?
Oh,
And yeah, yeah. And yet I was saying nothing. Nobody knew what was going on in the home,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? And so yeah, I reclaimed that. That's Kim Talks. I do talk. And I do talk a lot, but now I talk about the stuff that's important.
Right.
And nobody's shutting me up.
You go, girl.
You know, that's the beauty of, are you truly taking space in your world? And it's interesting because perception is crazy. Perception is crazy. You can have two people that go through a scenario, and the one person's perception is completely different from the other person's perception of the exact same set of circumstances.
Mhm. Right.
So what when we're just to take this, I want to wrap this all up a bit. Right now, somebody's listening, maybe they're an adult going right now dealing with their own personal insecurities and vulnerabilities due to childhood bullying.
Mhm.
They could be triggered by some of the crap that's on social media, and I will use that harsh language there. It is crap. People
Mhm.
are too mean out there.
That's right.
Um, And then these people are witnessing their children going
Hmm.
through the same struggles.
Yeah.
What are some things that parent and child can do collectively
Hmm.
to help heal and move forward and stop that generational cycle that leaves children vulnerable?
Yeah. Well, I think what you were talking about, that you were bullied, and sharing that with your child so that I think a lot of times kids don't talk to their parents about it because they feel like their parents are going to be ashamed of them, and so if you tell them, hey, I was bullied, or your dad was bullied, and we turned out fine. And of course, that's the thing about the book. All these people were bullied, that all your heroes were bullied. So that just that conversation, I think, is so enlightening for them. But doing that role playing, where they practice not responding to bullies the way bullies want them to respond. Also, giving them compassion. Don't. Um, didn't, I lost my word again. Boy, this jet lag is really having an effect. Uh, don't deny how bad it is. You know how when we were growing up, or when my kids were little, everybody would say, well, boys will be boys, which basically is discounting the whole experience of being bullied. And it's
Yeah.
not to be discounted. So if you can let your child know that you really understand how painful this is, and if you can share your own experiences, but send certain messages like, this won't last forever. You're only going to be in school for another year. Even if it continues, it's only going to be a couple of years, and then you'll move on and you will be whoever you want to be. And explain to them why bullies bully, and just communicating with them, really, and helping them have self-compassion. I think the two things that are so important to help anybody with are the rational thinking that I was talking about before, where you kind of, if, for instance, as an adult, if you say, well, I don't want to go to that party because nobody's going to like me. Okay, stop right there. What evidence do you have that no one's going to like me? And that a lot of them just are carrying those messages from when they were kids. People didn't like me then, they're not going to like me now. They're hard to get rid of, as we were saying. But the other thing is, besides being rational, is being self-compassionate. If you've had a bad day at school where kids are being mean to you, find something really special you can do at home. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money or time, but put on your favorite music, or watch your favorite TV show, or call some relative in another state that you haven't talked to for a while. Anything. And it's nice to have a list of things that you can do to help yourself feel better at the end of a difficult day. That can go for adults or kids, really. But self-compassion. We tend to go in the opposite direction. If somebody is saying something bad about us, we just chime in, right? Yeah, he's right. I really am this, or I really am that. That's obviously not going to be helpful. But he called me these names and I'm feeling bad, so I'm going to just do such and such, whatever it may be, whatever your personal feel good things are.
I heard a great tip recently to have a trash journal and a treasure journal. All the garbage that you spew to yourself, write down in your trash journal.
Uh-huh.
Fill that sucker up and then burn it.
Yeah.
All the great things you accomplished. You made a great meatloaf. You took a walk with your dog. You played a game of cards with your child. You
Right.
spent time being present.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
I swear, being present is like a present. It is literally like hens, and here's an old term, hen's teeth. I'm not quite sure where that one comes from because I don't think hens have teeth, but never mind. It's old Kansas thing, as rare as hen's teeth. But be present, folks. Be present.
Right.
So, Patricia, where can we find you? Do you have a website? Anything that you can share with us?
I have a website. It's from loser to legend book.com. And then I'm on Instagram. This is all new to me because I haven't been doing social media. I'm kind of,
I'm with you. You know what? You and me both, Patricia. If I did not have a third party, I would not be on social media. I like LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is like a brainy thing, right? They got all the smart people. Don't get me wrong, Instagram's lovely. I know what I look like. Do we need more pictures of me?
Oh, no, not picture. In my case, what I've started to do is I have people send in, yeah, right, have people send in pictures of their kids reading the book. So I have a whole bunch of pictures of these kids reading the book, and I feel so good when I see that, that they're
Now
actually,
that is awesome. That is a good use of an Instagram page for sure.
yeah.
And is Instagram legend to loser to legend book?
No book, From Loser to Legend.
From loser to legend. All
From
right.
Legend book
Um,
is the website.
so share with us a quote that helps inspire you on the dark days or on the days that are a little challenge or just makes you feel good.
Yeah. I like this one. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain.
I love that one.
I love
I love that one.
because life is not a bowl of cherries like some of us may have been taught to believe growing up. Everybody's going to have hardships. So if you're waiting for things to get wonderful, you're going to be waiting a long time. So if you can learn how to deal with it, develop resilience, which is what your show is all about, more power to you, right?
Absolutely. You know what, folks? Be present because the life that you have, you only get one go around.
Yeah.
One go around. That's all you get.
Yes,
I
and you have a choice about how you react to things. Everything may feel out of your control, but you have control over how you react to those things, and that's the
yeah.
secret, I think. I'm sorry, did I?
And no, you're absolutely right. And I firmly believe being an adult is the ultimate equalizer, folks. We can be the change, we can make the change, we can project the change we choose to see or want to see. So
Yeah,
be the person that you want to be treated like. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate your time. I love this conversation. I knew I would enjoy just chatting with you.
thank you. I've really enjoyed it too. You do a wonderful job at what you do, just so you know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, you know what, folks? That's it for me this time around. If you feel that your resiliency is lagging, do listen and lean in to our resilient community. You can go to resilientgift.com and get our free monthly magazine that, showcase amazing women like Patricia, the insight and inspiration that we're trying to move forward. The reality is we are the hand that rocks the cradle. We are the change that needs to be happening in this world. It's just whether or not you choose to step up and be the change, whether or not you're ready. And if you're not ready today, don't worry, I got you covered until you're ready to pick up the gauntlet. So, again, I'm Kim Hayden, your host here at Kim Talks Resilience.